Lisa, thank you so much for letting us into your beautiful home. I appreciate it so much.
Thanks for coming, Chris.
Before we started, we were talking a little bit about your caregiving journey. If we could just rewind a little bit and hear more about your backstory and what has your life looked like with care?
Well, it occurred to me today, and I hadn't really thought about it, that I have been in a sandwich caregiving role for more than 10 years, as long as my kids have been alive. My husband and I became parents quite late. I was 40 when I had my first child and 43 when I had my second child. My husband was 47 when we had our first and 50 when we had our second child. And so very early on, my own father was starting to really struggle with his health during my first pregnancy and when I had our child. And for their entire lives, my children, up until he passed away last year, grew up having their lives kind of interrupted whenever my father would have a fall. For a while, he was living with us because he was just so unstable, and I had to have eyes on him at all times. He then moved to a facility close to us, but was coming over every day. Then he moved back to Sacramento and was in an assisted living facility, but we were still getting calls all the time that he was falling or having some issues because he was dealing with dementia and other issues. And now my own mom is 78, and she's been so helpful throughout the girls' lives and even cooked for us many nights. And whenever I needed her, because I was traveling all the time, she would come and take care of my kids. She was their surrogate mom. But now at 78, she's starting to have issues that she's dealing with health-wise, and is not as strong as she was to pitch in the way she did. And my husband's mother is 93 years old and really, really having a hard time. Now, my husband's sister has been her primary caretaker, but she lives down the street as well. And nothing brings her more joy than seeing the kids. And so our conversations in our home throughout my children's lives have kind of gone from their activities and what they're doing in school to talking about different hospitalizations or the medications that their grandparents are dealing with. Like, it's a constant conversation that we are having in our home, like, juggling the care of our elders. And so that's just a gist of what my personal caretaking experience has been like. And a couple of years ago, when I started working for CBS News, I pitched a series on caregiving, and we highlighted other sandwich caregivers and paid caregivers. We also did an investigative piece about nefarious operators of nursing facilities and care homes. And the reason why it was so important for me to do that series, Chris, is because my sister and I have just felt so alone in this caregiving journey. So many times my sister would say to me, "Lisa, I'm so glad that we have each other," because it's just been, because we are older parents, our immediate circle has not been in the same predicament that we've been in, although that has been changing because more and more people are becoming caregivers themselves. But one day when I was preparing to do the series, I made an overture on my social media on Instagram. And I said, "I'm doing this series on caregiving. If you would like to share your story about being a caregiver or sandwich caregiver, please let me know." And Chris, I was just inundated with people responding. And up until then, I hadn't really heard that much about caregiving on social media. I mean, there were some people that were talking about it, But I think as the numbers have continued to grow and more people are finding themselves in this predicament, but also the stigma around caregiving has really changed. More and more people are talking about it. But I was shocked at that time how many people not only were sharing their stories, but so desperate to have their voices heard. And so for me, it's been a tremendous learning experience, and it's been an absolute privilege to be able to share the stories of other people who are finding themselves in this predicament of being a caregiver, a sandwich caregiver.
Through doing that series, did you see you and your sister in the lives of these other people?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
For us, taking care of our father, who again was in our home for a while, but then went into a facility. It was so hard. Like, it just became so hard. But what I also really appreciated about working on the series was hearing the stories and learning the stories of the duty that people felt and how sacred it is, and understanding and appreciating the privilege it is to be able to take care of the people who took care of us. I think it's so easy for us to get so mired in the difficulty of it and the struggle of it, because my God, it is so hard physically, mentally, financially. But just being reminded of the sacredness of it really made me feel so much better.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to do for people, to just remember like the sacrifices that our own parents made for us, and why it's so important that they get back what they put into us. And it's even impossible for us to give back a fraction of what our parents gave us.
I relate to that so heavily. I think a lot about my parents and what they went through to come to America from the Philippines to give us a better life, and how they took their parents with them in hopes that we could all be under one roof so that we can care for one another. Going back to you and your sister helping your dad, was there anything that you learned from that time that's making this time with your mother and your mother-in-law a little bit easier, or maybe you just saw things that you've seen before that you now know to look ahead for?
To be honest with you, there's so much now, and I feel like the conversation around caregiving has really changed. And there are these incredible stalwart activists out there like Ai-jen Poo and Richard Louie. And there's Shauna Sweeney, who started Tender Care because of her own caregiving experience. There is so much more conversation. There's so much more destigmatization. And there's so many more resources available. It is by no means perfect, and so much work needs to be done. And as a country and as a federal government, we need to really lean into just the astounding number of people who are in this situation. But there are far more resources that are available now to people than there were even a couple of years ago when my sister and I were in the middle of our caregiving journey with our dad.
Yeah. How do you find the rhythm or the balance between caring for your mother and mother-in-law and now your children? How do you find the balance between the two?
I don't think that word balance exists. I mean, with our kids, we can kind of get them on a schedule. But with our parents, we just don't know what is going to happen. The accidents, the forgetfulness, the unpredictability of it, and also, trying to help our parents maintain dignity. They don't want to be so reliant on us or anybody, because they've spent their whole lives being so independent. So even just kind of like navigating conversations with them and trying to help them maintain their independence. I think that's one of the things that we struggled with and are continuing to struggle with. And my God, I look at my mother-in-law right now at 93, who had such an incredible career. She ran the Head Start program in Newark, New Jersey as an immigrant. She worked alongside Shirley Chisholm, like incredibly educated independent woman, and now she's just so in need of care for everything. It breaks my heart. And so trying to help our elders maintain whatever independence they can hold on to is also so important for me to try to be able to do.
Yeah. Through the work that you've done with CBS and doing that piece on caregiving, was there anything that surprised you when coming in and talking to these families?
I think the thing that just surprised me was just how many people are going through this. You know, you hear the numbers, you know, you hear the tens of millions of Americans who describe themselves as sandwich caregivers. But when you actually see and interact with people and understand the loads that they are carrying and how they're doing it, but how they're doing it with such love and care. I mean, that was something to be able to see that with my own eyes also just made me more devoted. Like it made me want to devote more of my voice and my platform to wanting to make their lives a little bit easier, to trying to decrease the burden that so many people are dealing with.
Yeah, you're such an amazing storyteller. What do you think telling the story of caregiving does to the culture of care? It might not immediately impact somebody right now where they might need physical help. They need somebody to come into the home, but I think it does something to them internally. What other things do you think storytelling, specifically around the culture of care, is doing for other caregivers?
I think storytelling is so important for the culture of caregivers because it allows caregivers to not feel so alone. I think that's the most important thing. Whether you are a family caregiver or a paid caregiver, it's a lowly paid, if not zero paid, job to do. And I think that people find inspiration, they find ideas, they find hope. They are reminded of the sacredness of the work and the importance of the work. And that's why storytelling is so important. And also, I think it's really important to share the resources that you find that might help people along this journey.
Yeah. I think a lot about my journey with my grandmother, and the reason I started telling the story of being a caregiver was because I was a young 23-year-old stepping into this role. I look around, none of my friends are caring for their grandmother or any of their relatives or people. So I had nobody to relate to. And so making these videos was just my scream, my cry for help, my longing for community. And I think that's what you've done for other people. You've really rallied caregivers and said, you guys aren't alone. I'm dealing with it in my personal life, and here are many stories of other people going through it in their lives.
That must have been amazing for you, Chris, because you were so young and there were so few people your age right at the center of it. But the response that you got was probably just like overwhelming.
It's very overwhelming. I mean, the first video that I ever posted, I have hundreds of comments of people saying, my mother looks like your grandmother. Seeing your videos, it reminds me of what's going on in my home. And now I feel less alone because I now see myself. They might not even necessarily look like me, be Filipino, be an immigrant, but they see themselves in me. And that's why I always tell people that caregiving will touch everyone at some point, at some capacity in their life. And I think that's why it's so important with the work that we do, telling the story of care and just letting people know that they're not alone. We might not be able to physically be there at your home helping you out. But I do think storytelling, it just lets people know that there are people going through it too.
Yeah. And also just sharing information.
Yeah.
Is so vital. I mean, tender care is such an incredible innovation and really will allow people to alleviate so much of the burden because it's a platform where everything is thought of, right? Your appointments, your medication, finding resources. Like I wish that was available when my father was going through what he was going through, because we really struggled with finding the right places, the right people. And there are a lot of people who are trying to take advantage of families that are vulnerable and of our senior population. And it makes me sick, honestly. And so connecting people with trustworthy resources is also incredibly important to me.
How did Tender Care come onto your radar?
When I was working on the series about caregiving, I have this friend named Bing Chen who knows everyone, knows everyone and their mother. He actually reached out to me and said, "You have to reach out to Shauna Sweeney because she was this really bright executive at Facebook who left everything, left this very lucrative career in tech to start Tender Care because she wanted to." Create the platform that she has needed to take care of her father. And the moment I connected with her, we clicked, and I so appreciated what she was trying to do, and to see where it's come today and what a useful tool it's become. Like, we got to shout this from the rooftops.
Yeah, because I think you came on, you started working or like at least talking to Sean and being public about your guys' relationship, your relationship with Tender Care when they were tender, before they were Tender Care in the early days. And there must have been something that you saw, whether in Shauna or in the product, that was like, yeah, there's something here. Do you remember what that was?
Absolutely. So I had just done this 3-part series on caregiving, where caregivers, both paid and family caregivers, were just like struggling to navigate the financial process, and the falls that their elders were experiencing, and the scheduling, and there's just so many issues. And I met Shauna, who was creating a product and a platform that was trying to help with all of those things. Yeah. And so I did an IG Live with her, and it was just in the beginning of Tender. It hadn't even become Tender Care yet. And so it may have even happened too early at that time, because I wished at that time I could have just told everybody, like, get on it now, because all of these issues would be ameliorated. But now they are, because Tender Care has really evolved so much. And really, I think anyone who finds themselves in a caretaking position could benefit from the services that Tender Care provides. Even if it's just setting alarms or getting these notifications about when your loved one needs to take their medication or their doctor's appointments, or keeping track of the medicine. That was one of the most difficult things for my sister and me to do. And I have to say that I have to give all the credit to my sister, because she knew every kind of benzodiazepine. She knew every SSRI. She knew every kind of heart medication. Because it's so hard to keep track of all of those things. And every time your loved one ends up in the hospital, as you probably know, Chris, like, someone needs to be able to communicate that to the doctors. And if you have all of that information on an app or at your disposal and easily accessible, that makes it so much easier for you and for your loved one.
Are you bombarded by other companies? Like, are there people knocking at your door all the time saying, this is our company and we would love to work with you because of the work that you do on television and with your presence online? Are there people coming to you and knocking on your door and like saying that we want to work with you?
I mean, I think throughout my career, there have been a lot of companies that have wanted to work with me. But I will only work with a company if I really believe in what they're doing. And I, Tender Care is just one of those companies that I know will make the lives of caregivers easier. Like, having this resource will definitively, and I walked through the platform with my sister-in-law just recently, because she was setting all these alarms on her phone. Like, we'd be eating dinner, the alarms would go off. She'd be playing with the kids, the alarms would go off. And these were alarms for her mom's, medication and so on. And so I said, don't you realize you could actually have this app that will set these notifications for you, so you don't have to keep continuously setting these alarms. That in and of itself has been hugely helpful for her.
Yeah. So you first meet with Shauna and do that IG live, I think a couple of years ago now. And then there was some time in between. What is, how do you get involved now, and why join and really be part of the team now?
Because people just kind of come to me if they have questions or information because of the series that I did, and that I haven't been shy about sharing my caregiving experience. Shauna asked me if I would like to be involved with the company as their chief care officer to help try and communicate the story of tender care, and to also share stories of people who are finding themselves in these roles as caregivers and sandwich caregivers. And it's a huge honor for me because I've found myself in this role for the last more than 10 years, and I don't see that journey ending anytime soon. And if I can be a source of support, if sharing my story helps people feel less alone, if I can offer any help based on, my body of work or the experiences that I've had, count me in.
Yeah, that's amazing. And do you have hope for the future of caregiving?
I do have hope for the future of caregiving because we will all find ourselves in this position. You can't run away from it. We will all find ourselves in this position, whether we're caring for a child or caring for our parents. And that cliched saying, stronger together, I think if we all make this part of our collective consciousness and recognize the importance, but also the sacredness of this role, I think that we can change the entire culture and make caregiving something that we all aspire to do and that we're proud of.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the caregivers who are listening to this, who are stepping into this role, who might not even consider themselves caregivers. They're just helping out mom or dad or grandma. If you had to think about the younger version of you and your sister all those years ago, taking care of your dad, stepping into that role, to where you guys are now, helping your mother and your mother-in-law, what few things have you learned in all of this time that you could maybe give to people that they could expedite this learning process and not go through the heartaches that you guys went through?
I wish that someone would have told me that there are things that you just need to prepare for. Keeping track of your parents' medications, helping them navigate their insurance, figuring out what they need to pay for out of pocket and what will be covered by insurance or their pensions, if they even have pensions. I mean, there's so much information that people have to be prepared for. And I would also say, because as I told you, my husband and I became parents a lot later. And many people are finding themselves becoming parents like into their 40s, sometimes even into their late 40s. No one ever told me that in a pretty short period of time thereafter that we would be having to take care of our parents as well as our kids. And so even just adopting that mindset is something that I would tell people to be prepared for. Don't go into it blindly if you can, because if you do go into it blindly, you will feel overwhelmed. And that there's so many tools now at your disposal, like tender care and other platforms and outlets, but that there are a lot of people who've been thinking about this, who have done a lot of the work for you.
Yeah. And I would regret leaving here not talking about this one thing that is always top of mind for me, and that's taking care of yourself. Because as you're taking care of children and as you're helping out your family, sometimes people forget about themselves. And I've heard a little bit about what you do for self-care. Can you just speak on self-care?
I know I am someone who always tells people that they need to take care of themselves, and I don't do the greatest job of taking care of myself, except that I make it a point to go to the gym quite regularly or to just, weight train, even in my own home. I've got a set of weights right outside. My mom right now is struggling with a whole host of physical ailments, many of which I think she could have prevented if she had the information that I do now about midlife. And that's another thing that I'm trying to direct my focus to right now, is helping women of my generation, but also our mom's generation, figure out ways to maintain our strength in our bodies and our brains and our spirits. My mom and I are starting a platform of our own called Mighty Lings, which is all really about intergenerational healing and wellness and strength. Because I think that it's, our mom's generation they didn't have access to this kind of information, and it's never too late. It's never too late. I don't know. That wasn't answering your question. You asked me a different question.
Yeah. How are you taking care of yourself, Lisa?
How am I taking care of myself?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, to get out and to move my body and to build strength. I would say that's the way that I am taking care of my body, and I'm trying to read as much as I can and stay off my device.
Which is tough.
It's hard, Chris. I mean, when taking care of kids and parents is. Whew.
Yeah, I'm not one to judge. I try my best to stay off, and I get sucked in all the time.
What do you do?
For self-care, I enjoy running. That is my exercise of choice. I also am weightlifting 3 times a week because it's very good. I mean, obviously aesthetically it's great, but more so for long-term bone density. It's one of the best. I mean, my grandmother had osteoporosis, and her doctor, I don't know how long he was telling her to be exercising. I'm sure it was, for a while. I don't know if she ever really listened. But I always think,
Chris, I don't think her doctors probably did tell her, because my mom, no one ever told her that it was important to build bone density. Women's health has been a black hole for far too long. Most research conducted on humans for product development and medical research was done on men. And so women's health has been a black hole. And my mom, had she been aware of how important it is to maintain normal hormone levels, she might not be in the predicament that she's in with osteoporosis. Her doctor never told her that how important it was to build bone density.
Yeah.
It's never too late. And that's why she's working hard to do it now. But it's so important to communicate to our elders that they also need to do their part.
Yes.
To maintain their strength.
I talk to my mother about this all the time. And I use my grandmother, her mother, as the number one use case for, hey, if we don't take care of our bones, especially with the information that we have now, we are not being good stewards of the body that we have. And we only get one. Yeah.
Broken bones are the number one reason for hospital admittances in America.
Yeah. And just a little bit of strength training, on a weekly basis. It doesn't even really have to be intense. I think a lot of people's perception of the gym who don't regularly lift weights, it's very intimidating and I don't want to be around all these people. But I think for the most part, my experience in the gym is everybody in there is very encouraging, or kept keeping to themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I go to these bone strength classes with a bunch of old ladies. I'm usually the youngest one, but they are working really hard because it's never too late.
Yeah.
And you can't see it now, but I have a trampoline in the other room and people come over and they think it's my kid's trampoline, but no, it's mine. And I got one for my mom too, because rebounding and jumping on a trampoline is a great source of cardio, but it's also good for people with osteoporosis.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're being such a great example for your children, showing them that you care about your body. So you're going to do what it takes to care for it. I think about you as an example. I mean, this is our first time ever meeting in person, but just hearing the kind of parent you are to your children, they have such a great example. And I think children learn more from what you do than what you say. And I learned so much from my parents just from the example they provided to me.
Well, and that's another thing, Chris, that I I want to talk about here is, we talk a lot about caregiving, but we don't talk enough about really taking the time to know our parents' stories. So many of our parents came to this country as immigrants, and they closed the book on their past because they wanted to get a fresh start in this country. And some of them went through some very difficult things. My mom certainly did. And I also think that one of the ways that our parents and our elders can strengthen themselves is by confronting some of the things that they went through, communicating about some of the things that they went through in their past, because compartmentalizing that and holding that in for so long can really have a destructive impact on your body and your soul. And so taking that time to see your loved one, your parent, your grandparent, and allowing them to share, allowing them to cry, I think can be so healing for them and for you and for your relationship, and take it to another level.
Do you have any tips for people who see you and say, well, that's easy for you to say because you're this amazing journalist and storyteller, so it might be easy for you to try and pull that out of them? Because I feel the same with my parents. I don't sit down and interview them, but I love hearing about the backstory, who they were before I came into this world and who they were when they were immigrating to America, because that's such a fascinating story to me. But for the people who are listening who are like, yeah, I would love to know who my parents are, like, how did they get started with that?
One of the things that I did that was so important, but it was very, very hard, and this happened a long time ago, was I took my mom and I went back to Taiwan, which is where she was from. And we went back to that environment where she endured some of the pain and hardship that she was living with. And it was a really, really important trip because it gave us the chance, and it gave me a chance to kind of just see for myself what the environment looked like. But, taking your parent out of their day-to-day environment and either bringing them back or just going into a different environment altogether, and just taking that time, that one-on-one time. I think we're so busy with so much going on in our lives, and there's so much noise all around us, but taking them to a place where you're just together and you want to just see them and let them know that you want to see them. I think that could be a great first step.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think about when I go to the Philippines with my parents and we walk down the streets they used to walk down, and it just flows out of them, the stories and who they used to be and all these things. And it's so beautiful because it gives me, it shows me, sort of who I am and the makings of who I am because of who they used to be and who they were.
Yeah. I mean, there's one photograph of my mom that exists as a child, only one. And I remember, we were looking at that photo and I asked her, like, who is this girl and what was she thinking and what was her life at this time? Ooh, it was hard because she was not a happy little girl, but it really kind of gave us this open door to kind of talk about some of the things that she went through in a setting that was very warm and and quiet, and she just it really gave her the sort of permission to share.
Yeah.
And to dislodge what she'd been holding.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Are your kids curious about who their grandparents are and who their grandmothers are?
They're young right now, 12 and 9. And when I think about my own grandmother, who to this day is the most important person in my life, there's so much that I wish that I could have told her that she could have told me. I mean, when people ask me, what's your greatest wish? My wish is that I could spend one more day with my grandmother. Because when I was my kid's age, all I cared about was kind of doing my own thing. But that's another reason why it's really important to learn the stories of our elders so that you can pass those down to your kids and they can pass those stories down to their kids.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And I saw a little glimpse of your daughter's relationship with her grandmother. I think she was like, they were playing a little game. And it's just so sweet to see. I love seeing children and their grandchildren and their grandparents, because you only get two in this life. You only get a set of two. And unfortunately, not everybody gets the chance to spend time with them. But for the people that do, I always encourage everyone to try, if there's no connection, to make the reconnection. Because like I said, you only get two sets of grandparents, and they have so much wisdom and lived experience that we could learn from.
When my kids were really little, both grandmas would come over every single day, every day. And, because they're our parents, they would constantly tell my husband and me, like, what we were doing wrong. And usually what we were doing wrong. Very rarely did they tell us about things we were doing right. And at a certain point, my husband said to me, do you think it's too much? Like, should we tell them not to come over every single day? And I said, no. I said, even though it sometimes drives us crazy because they're constantly telling us what we're doing wrong, it's not going to be forever. And already it's not forever. Already my mother-in-law can't come over every night. And so my kids have to go see her. And now they're so busy that it's harder and harder to go see her. And so to the extent that you can spend time with your elder loved ones, and you can have your kids spend time with your elder loved ones. Like, it's not going to be forever, and it's precious, precious time.
Yeah, especially with the holidays here. I think this is a time where people gather, and I think this is such a great opportunity. If this is the time of the year that you see loved ones, like, take the few minutes to ask a story or to ask about a story. I mean, we're a little biased because we love stories, so I'm always trying to hear a story that I've maybe heard a million times before, but this is such a perfect time to just ask, be curious.
Yeah, my little girl she's such a special soul. And when she goes over to her 93-year-old grandma's house, my grandmother, my mother-in-law calls her sunshine. She creates all these little games that she plays with her. Sometimes it's just like throwing a piece of Kleenex, a rolled up ball of Kleenex into a cup, or sometimes it's, playing, what do you call it? Clapping hands and, whatever it is, she thinks of all these games. And it's just like to see that joy on my mother-in-law's face. I mean, that's what she's living for. She didn't become a grandma until she was 81 years old.
Yeah.
And so that's really what's kind of keeping her going, is just those rare moments these days when she can spend time with her grandkids. Yeah,
and what a blessing that she gets to still experience, even at 81, she still gets to experience the love of a grandchild. I've heard, I don't know, maybe one day I'll get to experience what a grandchild is like. But there's no love like a grandchild's love. So.
For sure. And because she became a grandmother so late, most of her friends, their grandchildren, they're already adults. Mm-hmm. And so in some ways, having young grandkids was really a benefit for her, because during the latter part of her life, she had these young kids to be around her all the time, which was lovely, lovely. It's funny, she told some of her friends that she was going to her granddaughter's graduation. They're like, oh, what college? And she said, oh no, it's from kindergarten. But nevertheless, it's been just a joy to have just young kids around her at this stage of her life.
Yeah, I'm sure it's making this chapter of her life so much more fulfilling to be around grandchildren. I think about this all the time. I try to be very outspoken about the fact that it was a privilege to be around my grandparents the way that I was. And I think this is part of what changes the culture of care, is if we are examples to our children, showing them that we take care of our elders, and that hopefully if I ever needed to be taken care of, that you would be the one stepping into that role. And then the cycle continues. And I know that not everybody has that privilege to care for a family member, but my hope in my family and lineage is that because I took care of my grandparents, and I will most likely be taking care of my parents, I hope that I can pass that on to my children, because that's how we were many years ago. We were together in a village.
And look, we are Asian. So this is what Asians do, is they take care of generations of family members. I mean, it's a very American thing to leave the family home and have your own independent lives. And I think we're starting to see the benefits of having like intergenerational homes. It's good for everyone. And ultimately, it allows people to not feel as lonely. And it really, I think, builds empathy. And I can't think of anything we need more of these days.
So true. 100%. Well, Lisa, I appreciate you so much for allowing us into your home. I just want to give you encouragement. All of the work that you've done with the caregiving series, and outside of just telling other people's stories and helping people be seen, you do such a great job at letting people allowing people to pull their guard down and just tell their story so honestly. I think that is a gift, and you do such a great job of telling other people's stories that I wanted to give you some encouragement. You are so inspiring, and I'm so happy that you're part of the Tender Care team. I couldn't think of a better person to have on board, and I'm so excited to see what we do in these next coming years.
Well, I'm so happy to be walking alongside your journey as well at Tender Care. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.